What's up techies? If you're new here, my name is Cam. I'm an ex-technical recruiter turned software engineer, and I've created this channel to share my rare experience with both sides of the table. Now 2020 has been a very strange year with a lot of employment insecurity. People are looking for a stable career that will be unaffected by lockdowns and such, and generally being future-proof. Quite rightly, a lot of these people are now looking at becoming a software engineer, which is what I did, in fact, almost 2 years ago now. If you've got to this point, you're most likely aware that there are multiple programming languages out there. So naturally, the decision of which to learn is pretty daunting. You might not have the information that you need. So hopefully today I can help you come to more of an informed decision. Now, the worst thing about YouTube for me are the really drawn out videos where they don't give you the answer for ages. So I'm going to tell you straight up that in 90% of cases, if not more, I recommend you either learn JavaScript, different from Java, or Python. So the only situation where you wouldn't want that is if you're in quite specific circumstances, which I'll explain later on. Despite recommending both, I wouldn't recommend trying to learn both at the same time. It's just kind of a recipe for confusion. I actually tried doing the same thing, and it was very difficult for me to get to grips with the syntax, so like how the language is structured and how you write things, because the two are quite different, so it can get very confusing. For reference, most jobs involving programming are in software engineering, DevOps, data science, and as a disclaimer in general, I'm absolutely not an expert software engineer. It is my day job, but I'm not a senior engineer. I'm still classified as a junior. So, please just take this as my 2 cents and don't take every single technical explanation as complete fact. So if you're brand new to programming in general, the biggest question you're going to want to ask yourself is what kind of work do you want to do? That's what I would suggest to someone if they're thinking about it. Generally in modern web development, which is what most people do, there's front-end and back-end roles, as well as DevOps. Also on the side as well, which isn't necessarily just web development, you have data science and data analysis. So I'll start off with front-end. This is actually what I spend most of my time doing. It's what I quite enjoy. If you're interested in controlling how a user directly interacts with an application, this area is for you. That's exactly what you do. Basically, if the user sees it, you're controlling it. So the best option for you if you're going to be doing this is learning JavaScript, because this is the de facto sort of standard language of the web in 2020. You should also learn HTML and CSS alongside of it. It's really imperative not to neglect them. A lot of people do, and they don't actually realise when they get in a job full time how important they are. CSS in particular for me, I found really hard once I got into a full-time job because I'd focused so much on JavaScript. A great way to learn that is free CodeCamp. As the name suggests, it's totally free. I do suggest donating if you can afford it. They have a very comprehensive HTML and CSS module, so that would actually take you around 300 hours. So if you're doing it all properly, you really can learn inside out with it. You can then build a JavaScript application using those new skills. JavaScript takes a little while to learn, and I recommend learning vanilla first. So that means you don't have a framework on top. After you've worked on JavaScript for a while, then you should pick up a framework too for employability reasons. So I recommend that if you're learning a new framework, you start with either React, Vue, or Angular. It doesn't matter especially which one you choose. Try them all if you like, but something I'll touch on a bit later, but does apply here. Check the jobs in your area if it's very heavy on one. So for example, in London, where I live, React jobs are quite heavy, followed by Angular. We don't actually have that many Vue jobs, but from what I understand in Asia, Vue is what people use the most. So it really depends on your locality. When you're doing this as well, and especially if you're self-teaching, the best thing to do is work on a number of projects, and I'll list a few of those off for each language that I'm discussing here and each type of role. But some ideas for if you want to work on the front end, I would say you can build a weather checker. So that was my first kind of full application, something that someone could actually use. I built it using OpenWeather's free API, which is available in the description below. It's very easy, well documented. You can check out a lot of different approaches online. So you can go on CodePen or StackBlitz and see what people have done there. Obviously, if you do decide to do that, don't just copy and paste their code, because that really just defeats the learning objective. You know, we're not in school anymore trying to get a grade. We're actually trying to get employment here, and you need to understand behind the code behind what you're writing. I would also recommend as well, you can build like a secure passcode generator I've done one of these myself as well. That's available in the description. So I knocked one together very quickly in React. It's a very good way to take a actually quite complex problem where you have a lot of code going on, kind of your first draft, to then shrink it down. So I'd recommend doing that. Again, as I said, code is in the description. If you're not comfortable enough to work on a full-blown app outside of some kind of web environment, Free Code Camp has got a number of really good projects that you can work on, starting from very simple JavaScript applications up to full-blown front-end web apps. You should absolutely work on your portfolio website. That is the most critical thing that I know front-end developers miss. It's often the first thing that a recruiter would look at. If they click onto your portfolio website and it's not very impressive, there's not many interactive things going on, then it's like an HR person or a recruiter going into an interview and having a terrible CV or resume. So it's a really simple way to impress recruiters and turn heads. I remember working as a technical recruiter myself, and what people really liked was when we had a front-end developer who had a really cool website, and you would often get the whole team sort of crowding around looking at it. So it's a really good way to stick in the memory of recruiters and hiring managers, because remember, they're not going to be as impressed by the actual code you've written, because invariably they don't understand it. Whereas something really cool on the front end is going to turn their head. Obviously, you can't do that if you're going to be working on the back end, which brings me on. So building the infrastructure behind software is equally as important. And of course, there's a huge market for developers to do just that. If that sounds appealing to you, then back-end engineering or DevOps are where you would find yourself. And for someone who's new and ambitious in that area, I would recommend learning Python. It's been really growing in popularity, although it's not a new language. It's been around for a while, been around since the 90s. And the market has really been trending up, both in terms of vacancies available and salaries as well. So it hits an ideal middle ground as well between performance and ease of use. And the open source community is amazing. So there's a lot of community contributions to it that you can use and improve. So it's a really good option. If you are in an area that isn't a tech hub, so to speak, it might always be worth checking out .NET or Java. So a larger enterprise is more likely to use these languages, so you'll have some good opportunities in your area for those. If you're looking at doing some back-end projects, it's always really good to do anything that links to APIs. So I'm going to drop a list of rapid APIs, like top 50 APIs of all time, which is going to be really good for giving you plenty of ideas. Web scrapers are also really good as well. That's a really ideal way to impress recruiters. There's a really good library in Python called Beautiful Soup. So you could even build a web scraper that hits like all the major job sites and find all the jobs you're interested in. So that's kind of killing two birds in one stone, and the recruiters would be especially impressed by that. So that's a really good thing you could do. If you're really junior as well and you haven't had the chance to do any commercial experience, you can use Python to automate spreadsheets for your friends and family, so you can help them out. Maybe someone that's a bit less techy. The number one resource I'd recommend for using Python is a book called Automate the Boring Stuff with Python. So if you want to do those spreadsheet projects, for instance, there's a ton of information for that sort of thing. But the book is absolutely fantastic, and if I recall correctly, it's often given away for free. That's how I got hold of it, and I really enjoyed its writing style. So if I can find a free link, I'll put it in the description. If not, it's available on Amazon as well. And for DevOps as well, I would recommend if you made some kind of personal project, then just go through like a professional deployment process and technique. That would be your best thing to do, and just try and again build stuff in Python in general. That would be your best thing to do. In terms of the final career path that I'm going to talk about today, which is data science / data analysis, your best option would actually still be Python. It's already very commonly used in academia. Libraries such as NumPy will help you with a lot of really powerful statistical analysis, and even as well machine learning eventually. That's a tough one to start with as a junior, but it is the industry standard. It's also a good idea to consider R as well, which is used a lot in data analysis and again academia. So depending on your role, chances are you're probably going to be using one of those two. In terms of projects, if you're into the data side of things, I would recommend doing some sports data analysis. So if you go on Kaggle, which again, link in the description, there's a ton of free statistical data, not just about sports, but about everything, but about loads of major sports online. So you can use this to like predict results, prove how unpredictable a sport is. Like when I first picked up Python, I managed to actually find a repository on Kaggle with the records for every single international football match that has been played. And I was able to create a command line program where you can request specific team records, rank the teams, filter years, and more. Also as well, if you're interested in getting into financial technology, so either working for a traditional bank or a fintech kind of challenger, I would recommend using Python to do some analysis on the stock market and generally just like doing due diligence automated for companies. So that's going to be really impressive if for a recruiter there, because they really get to see your commercial skills in action. And if you're like a day trader, you could even do it you could even use it to make some money yourself. Kind of on the same vein, you can also do sentiment analysis, where you can like record tweets that are coming through, kind of judge if they are positive or not about a certain thing. So I know people have done this for cryptocurrencies and know whether to buy or sell. So that's quite a good thing to do. So those are a few of the projects you could do there. Again, I would say that with a caveat, I don't have that much knowledge of data science, so please don't take that as gospel. But those are a couple of projects you could do. I also as well just wanted to make a couple of general points that might seem quite obvious, but it's extremely important and will impact your decision quite heavily. So first off, as I mentioned earlier, you need to check the job market for where you are. Remember, even if the job is remote, they may require you in the office occasionally or work on the same time zone, so you need to be looking at what the businesses in your area do. Don't jump into this and learn Python if there's no Python jobs in your area. What you can do is you can go on LinkedIn, look at these current software engineers of that company and find out what skills they're using, because they'll normally explain it in their bios. So I'd recommend doing that. And a lot of the time the companies will just say on the website, you can just hit job boards and see how many vacancies there are for Java versus Python versus C# versus .NET. And that'll give you a really good idea. Python is growing, but like I said, I'm looking at this through the lens of London, and from what I'm hearing, both in places like Berlin, Paris, New York, San Francisco, these are major tech hubs. I don't know so much about what's happening in other cities. Also as well, you really need to consider if you actually enjoy writing code in this language. If you like a language, you're much more likely to practice, therefore improve quicker. So you just got to pick one you like writing. You know, you might absolutely hate Python and prefer writing in Java, and in that kind of case, you're going to become a better engineer quicker because you're going to practice more. A lot of the time, what people are looking for with juniors is your approach rather than the execution. So your approach to problems. So it doesn't matter so much if maybe you've learned a different programming language, because I'll teach you something new. For instance, my day job right now, I didn't know Angular, which is a framework of JavaScript, until I joined, but it was because of how I approach problems in React, which was a framework I knew before. So you shouldn't get too hung up on it, and just make sure that you practice in something you know you enjoy and that you know brings the best out of you. So thanks again for checking this out. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Obviously that helps me out. If you do have any video ideas or general feedback, because of course I'm so new to this whole thing, please just let me know. And if you want any general employment advice, just drop me a message. My Twitter is in the description. Have a great day, guys, and happy coding.